welcome to the Esmeric Art Studio. For today's project, we are going to need these little wooden discs, and these ones are 1.5 inch long. We are also, or wide, we are also going to need key rings. I only have 1.25 inch, but you can also use 1 inch rings, some O-rings to connect the keychain to the disc. They are 9 millimeters. We're going to need some chain, and then we will also need some jewelry tools like long nose pliers just to connect everything. And this is a little tool that makes holes in the disc, and we're also going to need a needle or just something to tidy up the hole. We're going to need a roller, or you can use your fingers, or a paper stump, a 1.5 inch punch, or you can use scissors to cut out the pewter disc. We're going to need some work surfaces, hard and a semi-soft, some metal tape. For this project, I'm going to use some offcuts that I have. So if you have any offcuts, this is a good way to use them. Mostly going to be working with glue. And some essential tools that we are going to need is a pencil, a Teflon tool as a refiner, and a paper stump, and some scissors if you do not have the punches available. So as for the pewter, we are going to need some discs. So I have already cut out some of the disc, and sometimes when I have bigger pieces of pewter left, what I actually would do is I would just take them and sort of, cut away some of the points and run them through my Cuttlebug in a embossing folder, and put some blackening on them, and then they are handy when I need it for small projects or for metal embellishments. And as for the plain pewter, I'm going to use that to add a sediment, a word for the one side. So cut some strips that you will need, and adjust the measurements to fit the wooden disc or cardboard round that you are going to use. Remove the backing of the metal tape and run it on the side of the disc, and then fold it over, and make sure that you flatten it with a tool, both on the sides or the rim, as well as on the flat side of the disc. The ones that I cut, or my strips, was about 3/8 of an inch wide and about 5.5 inch long. Use your punch and cut out the disc, or the scissors if you don't have a punch. Add some glue and adhere it to your wooden disc, or if you've used cardboard, to your cardboard disc, and just make sure that you get a good adhesion. Use either your roller or your finger or a paper stump for this. Next, we will be moving on to our plain pewter. Measure the size of your disc, and this is where we are going to write down our sentiment. You can write down a name, personalize it, just an initial, or even just a design that you can do on there. So this, we are going to use embossing. So with embossing is you're going to be working on the back of your pewter on a semi-soft surface, turn it around, back onto the front on a hard surface, and you are going to refine all over. Because these are small little words or very thin, I'm just going to go back in with my tool and rewrite it on a hard surface, come back to the front and refine it, flatten it, and move on. Usually embossing I will do on a paper pad, but for this I'm just going to use the canvas that's on my table as a soft surface. When I do lettering, I usually start in the middle and I work my way out to the front and then to the back. But for this project, because it's just a really small wood, and I know this is the amount of spacing that I have for it, that is why I would just start from the one side to the opposite side. My smile is done, and I'm just quickly going to go and give it a quick go over on the back and then move to the front and just make sure that it's really nice and crisp, and refine it, and then I will move on to the next step. So next I'm just going to add a background. You can leave it as is, but because it is going to take a lot of handling and hammering, I would suggest the best would be to add a background to your disc, so that if there's any hits and bumps and things like that, it will not be as noticeable. Now that our background is completed, the next step will be to cut out our disc, and you can either use your punch or scissors because you would have marked it, and add some blackening to it. So blackening is just a water-based permanent marker that you're going to color it in with, give it a little bit of time to dry, well, not completely dry, and then just start wiping it off with a paper towel or a soft cloth. And it's personal the amount of blackening that you would like to leave behind. Double check to make sure that there is no pieces that can hurt you or cut you, that everything is smooth. Add some glue to your sentiment or your word or design, and then just glue that to your disc as well. Give it a couple of minutes to dry, and then grab a tool and just run it along the edges, smoothing it, and make sure that it is smooth all around and that there is no part that is sticking out or that can hurt you. Next is we are going to make the hole, and if you do not have one of these hole makers, you can just use a nail on a hammer. Just make sure that you have a piece of wood underneath, and you can use that to make your hole. Use a needle or something just to tidy it up, and don't forget to flatten it again and make sure that the hole is open. Next step would be to add our O-ring. And with O-rings, you always have to remember it has sort of a memory. So bend it open, and you are just going to bend it back in the same way that you have done it open. So I've hooked it over through the hole, and then I did my chain. I use 8 of the little chain links. That was a good length for me. What I did do afterwards was, when I made, because I've made a couple of these, is I actually measured my chains out before the time to make sure that I have them ready to adhere or put into the little jump ring. Next, the last thing we're going to do is we are going to add our keyring to the chain, or the chain to the keyring. And once that is done, we are basically finished. These are actually holding up quite well. I've asked a friend of mine to sort of test drive it for me, and she has been using it for about 2 weeks, and she's very happy with it. So yeah, I think this is a really sturdy make. I've added one of the keychains I've made to my car keys, and I was just sitting here thinking it is such a nice gift to give to somebody, especially when if you can personalize it with their name on, or for stocking stuffers, we always need something small that we can put in there. So this will be ideal for that as well. As always, thank you so much for spending time with me in the studio. And always remember, the world of reality has its limits, but the world of imagination is boundless.